in this room, all of us, I presume, we all want to see food system transformation. But actually, it's really, really complicated to deliver that. Why? There are at least 3 factors that make it super difficult. First one is, not everyone outside of this room does want food system transformation. Many people are actually quite happy with the way things are going. They're doing very well, thank you very much. It doesn't matter that hunger isn't being reduced fast enough, that nutrition isn't being improved fast enough, that climate action isn't happening, that resilience isn't being delivered, that livelihoods aren't being generated, that biodiversity isn't being promoted and preserved. It doesn't matter to them with the way things are. That's the first reason why it's difficult. We have vested interests. The second reason it's difficult is it's really technical, it's really complicated. There are tons of different moving parts. There are different sectors, different parts of the food system, public, private, civil society, research, big companies, small companies, there's trade, there's all sorts of stuff that's happening. The third thing that makes it difficult, even if we have the political will to change it, even if we have the technical knowledge to figure out what needs to be done first and what's the most important thing to do we have the implementation? Do we have that at the individual level, the organizational level, and the institutional level? So it's really, really difficult. And it requires leadership from governments. Why governments? Government to set the tones. Governments are the ones that have signed up to the SDGs, and good functioning food systems will help us achieve those SDGs. So it requires good leadership that is visionary, that has strong levels of communication, that can say this is what we're trying to do with food system transformation, and it will be different in every country. Leadership that's able to build the coalitions and the alliances to get things done, because no single entity can get anything done. Leadership that is determined and has grit and can stay the course, because like anything difficult, there will be setbacks, there will be moments where we're wondering, is it all worth it, can we do it? And finally, leadership has the humility to say, actually, we reflected on this, it didn't work, and we're going to change course. So government leadership is really key. But governments cannot do it on their own. They need an ecosystem of support. That ecosystem comes from within the country, civil society, businesses, researchers, UN development partners, and it also comes from outside the country as well. The question we're asking is, how do we make sure that ecosystem is coherent, not chaotic? How do we make sure that ecosystem is collective and not individualistic? How do we make sure that ecosystem is symphonic and not simply a cacophony? That's the question we're asking today. Now, we're lucky to have a really great panel. We're lucky to have really good moderators and facilitators. And we need that, colleagues, because we need to listen to what the panelists say, really listen. And we need to listen to what they say they need from the rest of us, not just what we think they need. Right? So, colleagues, I'm asking you to really listen hard and reflect on what you hear from the people on the panel. Finally, we at GAIN, there are quite a few GAIN colleagues in the audience, we at GAIN will be listening very hard because we have just launched a 10-country, 5-year program called Nourishing Food Pathways. Nourishing Food Pathways, and that's all about achieving how to food system transformation, achieve a healthier diet from a sustainable food system. So we will be listening very closely and learning as well. So now let me pass over to Nadine Bossa. Nadine is the Director of Food Systems at IFAD, and she is Chief of the means of implementation, what we could call a program at the UN Food System Coordination Hub. And she has, I just got to toot her horn because she's always praising me. She has led, along with her colleagues at the World Bank and IFAD and others, a fantastic process of mapping food system budgets. You know, talk about things you need to do to get food transformation. We can say we need more money, but if we don't know where the money we already domestically and internationally is going, kind of flying blind. And Nadine and her colleagues have really developed a fantastic tool, and I'm sure we'll hear much more about that. So Nadine, without further ado, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and happy to meet you. I'll be your moderator for the next 90 minutes. I should speak louder, so I'll try to scream and shout. So basically, Lawrence did a very good job already at the introduction, so as you will hear, effectiveness is part of the system transformation, but we know that it's not easy, and in reality, we know that we are not doing very well. The landscape is challenging, and you saw the latest state of the security report. We have to take a deep dive in the Africa region, and it's the only region in the world where all regions of Africa need security. Nutrition is also not doing well, and it's not only about malnutrition, it's also about obesity, which has become a leading cause of death and disease. We don't need to talk about environment and climate change, about the challenge that the war in Ukraine and the COVID-19 is posing to resilience. So governments are in the driving seat, but we even with massive effort at domestic resource mobilization, I'm talking about technical and financial, we need to live up to the commitment in terms of ecosystem of food. So what we are doing today is to start first with my first speaker, Priska Mwizaura, who is the country director of GAIN, because we are going to share lessons, experience, guiding principles on effective ecosystem of food. And we need to learn because we need to do better, much better than we are doing now. So Priska, I'm going to give you the floor as the first part and ask you to tell us how you do this, and the floor is yours.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, valued partners and colleagues. In the next minutes, I'd like to share with you how GAIN has been supporting African governments to advance their food system transformation agenda and efforts, highlighting our approach, what we've seen and witnessed as being some of the early successes and quick wins, and more importantly, what are some of those critical lessons learned that we need to review in terms of key issues and challenges that are preventing the ecosystem of support from functioning effectively. And then I'd like to leave the last slide for the panelists to consider some key points of discussion. So, sorry, let me get used to this. Okay. So how has GAIN supported governments on the food system front as well as on the pathway front? Support from GAIN started with the early engagements and preparations of the United Nations Food System Summit 2021. During this period, across 5 out of our 7 countries where GAIN continues to be operational, we supported national governments to facilitate food system dialogue sessions as well as the drafting of national pathway priorities and strategies. Also additional for us, what is very important was that during this period, we appointed policy advisors who accompanied the government during the food system dialogue sessions so as to make sure that national nutrition and health outcome priorities were being adequately and effectively addressed by the national pathway strategies alongside other food system priorities. Today, our policy advisors continue to journey with our national governments in terms of their food system endeavors, offering expert opinion, as well as technical assistance in terms of some of the best practice approaches that can be adapted to further advance policy priorities that are targeted towards strengthening the environment for pathway implementation. So now, most recently, I think Lawrence already announced, GAIN has been awarded a large-scale multi-donor Nourishing Food Pathway Program. I just want to talk about specifically across the African countries, what is it that this program wants to achieve? There are 5 overarching strategic priorities. The first is really looking at strengthening policy coherency and processes for improved pathway implementation. The second is really looking at how can we promote and facilitate greater inclusivity of the important voices of youth as well as of sub-national governments, because they play a critical role, influential role at the community level. The third really looks at developing tools and approaches for further guiding and informing private sector resourcing and financing towards investments that yield or can yield high impact pathway action. And the fourth strategy looks at how can we improve the evidence base for food system transformation implementation, which other countries can adapt. So now, 2 years later, what have been some of the early successes that we've observed? The ones that I would like to share with you are those that were cutting across multiple GAIN-supported countries, and these fall under 3 thematic areas. The first is on improved country food system agenda ownership and accountability. And what we saw in each GAIN-supported country was that this drove forward government's willingness to actually develop food system governance structures. Just to mention 2 examples, in Kenya, the Food System Summit National Secretariat was developed and sits under the Agriculture Transformation Office and has representatives for multiple stakeholders. In Mozambique, we saw the Agrarian Sector Coordination Committee actually being reactivated and is currently operational at the national and sub-national level. So we're really seeing increased accountability and ownership on the food system agenda front. The other thematic area where we're seeing encouraging progress is on improved coordination and decentralization of food system approaches. Just to mention 2 examples, in Nigeria, decentralized efforts to coordinate implementation on pathways at the state level are actually being guided by the country's sub-national food system dashboard, which offers specific state-specific information that guides their food system actions. In Ethiopia, we're seeing conveners from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Health co-lead an inter-ministerial coordination committee that is represented by 14 institutions. And of recent, we've noticed that the country is moving forward similar efforts to establish similar coordination structures at the regional level across 12 regions. Now, in terms of the third thematic area, this one really inspired me. We're actually seeing the developed pathway priorities committing budget allocations by the government as well as guiding cost and implementation plans. In Nigeria, their pathway priorities, as we speak, are guiding the development of the cost and implementation strategy as well as a monitoring and evaluation framework. Once these documents are completed, they are going to guide and initiate joint monitoring, which will have the participation of the government, development partners, as well as the civil service organization, really driving forward collective accountability on pathway implementation on what they're calling a geo-zonal political basis. Another area that we're seeing improvements and commitments is on budget allocation. In Tanzania, the Ministry of Finance actually took the pathway priorities and incorporated them in the national budget. What we saw was that in 2023, this offset a 3-time-fold increase in our agriculture sector budget. So that in itself is really highlighting the government's commitment. Now, in terms of what has been the pathway implementation momentum governments were really focused on short-term responses to the food crisis. Short-term responses to the food crisis, apologies. We noticed that the United Nations food system stock-taking moment really acting as a much-needed stimulus for pathway implementation action across many countries. Across GAIN-supported countries, what we did through our Nourishing Food Pathway program is that we supported governments across 4 of our countries to prepare for this stock-taking moment. Support on this front involved developing the voluntary progress reports, as well as the articulation of some of the best practice approaches that countries have been implementing. Also more so, during the event itself, GAIN supported the Nigerian government side event that was held during the Rome convening moments. In Tanzania, a food system assessment report that was developed with technical assistance from the United Nations Environment Programme and GAIN was also used as a basis of developing the country's voluntary progress report. So now, in concluding, okay, I'm not good at this thing. Okay. Sorry. So, what are we seeing in regards to some of the lessons learned and the challenges, particularly in regards to strengthening the ecosystem of support? Our assessment for this actually drew from our GAIN country offices' ongoing interactions with the national food system ministries and offices, as well as with food system actors and stakeholders that we collaborate with on an ongoing basis. So very broadly, because I know Nandine, my time is almost over. Yeah, it's almost over. What the assessment findings highlighted is that whilst the establishment of food system technical working group and task force are improving coordination of ecosystem of support, challenges still persist. And Laura's mentioned this. These challenges are actually improvising sometimes the quality of the ecosystem of support deployed assistance, the coherency, as well as the relevance. We identified about 8 of these challenges. For this meeting, I just want to talk to 2 of them, which really stood out to me. The first is that within the ecosystem of support, what we're seeing is that there lacks a common understanding in terms of what constitutes the food system approach. Please don't ask me what constitutes the food system approach, I'm still working on it. So basically what then this offsets is that within the ecosystem of support, some members offers assistance that is not well aligned with the government's national pathway priorities. And we're still, Lawrence, you highlighted this, or not in harmony with what other development partners are doing. The other area, which I was surprised to actually learn, was that pathways are dynamic by nature, because they work in an operational context whereby, weather seasonality is unpredictable, import food prices are unpredictable, so they have to be adapted, which forces our national convening ministries to shift the pathway priorities. And unfortunately, sometimes, as we all know, the ecosystem of support is not as responsive to these sudden shifts in priorities. So in concluding, our analysis was able to identify a few recommendations. And please humble yourselves. I know these were from a high-level analysis, and others will talk to this better than I. In terms of what could lead improved ecosystem of support, there were 6 key principles of engagement identified. I only want to talk to 3 that really spoke to me as an African. The first is the need for members to really respect the leadership role of our national government. The next is the need for us as ecosystem of support members to really embrace a common food system narrative. And the last one that I'd like to share with you today is really around the need for us as ecosystem of support members to function transparently. That's the only way our support is going to be relevant, is going to be coordinated, and will yield the end expected results. On that note, thank you for listening. Nandine, over to you.
Thank you to staff. I think Mr. we were told you are passionate, and we saw the passion for change in what you say. She highlighted key ingredients for success in supporting government food system transformation. And you will realize that these are things we know as development partners. When you talk about basically common narrative, we usually talk about country ownership, government priorities, vision, leadership. We also talk about objectives, about transparency. Maybe Mr. What you didn't add is results, because we need results in food system transformation. So with that messaging from you, based on my experience on the ground, I'm going to give the floor to our next distinguished speaker, is Mr. Dr. Ousmane Badiane, that most of you know. Basically a leading figure in agriculture and food systems in Africa. Ousmane is the executive chairman of Academia 2063. He's also basically leading the exercise, the support to the African Union on monitoring the Malabo Declaration, just to quote one. And basically he will be, I forgot to say, the World Food Prize winner in 2015. So Ousmane is known to a lot of us in the African arena of the system. I'm going to give him the floor to basically lead a panel of speakers from the government, because as Lawrence said, we need to hear from them what they need in terms of support, and we will also bring some development partners seeing how they address this need, and it will lead a dialogue between them. So Ousmane, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nadine. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you to Gaines for having us participate in this discussion. I've been asked to moderate the panel. I guess I would invite them to join us here on the stage. But let me introduce them first. We have two members of governments and two representatives of donor organizations. We'll be discussing several questions here, and at the end of the day, Nadine will have a Q&A. But on the panel, I'll be joined by Honest Kesi, National Convener, United Republic of Tanzania. If I may invite Honest to join us on the floor. Then from Kenya, we got Priscilla Miruri, Coordinator, Food Systems Technical Working Group. Priscilla, please join us. It is also my pleasure and honor to invite our two panel members from development partner organizations, starting with Kelly Cormier, Food Safety Division Chief at USAID, and finally Haja Jabiri, Founder and CEO of GBRI Limited, Youth Representative and Private Sector Representatives. Welcome to all of you for joining us. Thank you. Let me start with Honest and Priscilla from the government side. And I would like to know from you, how is food system transformation being advanced in your respective countries? And just take your time, share with us how you see. You heard from Priska on the ecosystem of support, on what's happening in a few countries, more in depth in your own experience in own countries. How is this agenda being advanced? And what would you like to share with us here? Thank you. Let me start perhaps with Priscilla first, and then I'll move to Honest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, I wanted you to be alert. Okay, my name is Priscilla Miruri from the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development in Kenya. I'm a technical advisor to the Cabinet Secretary. I also coordinate the multi-sector food systems technical working group. You'll all agree with me, and the other speakers have alluded, that tackling the issue of food system transformation, no one can do it alone. It actually takes a multi-sectoral approach, involving quite a number of government ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as development partners, as well as the private sector. In Kenya, our situation is very unique because we have 48 governments because of the county governments, 47 of them. They are key stakeholders, and therefore the coordination actually goes from the national level to the sub-national level. And of course, we have the farmers, the producers, who are very key. In line with the government agenda of bottom-up transformation in the country, we are saying that there is need to involve everybody along the value chain and leaving no one behind. So one of the biggest challenges we have had is actually in the coordination. You can imagine the complexity of the structures. It needs a lot of efforts to be able to coordinate so that everybody plays their respective role towards contributing to the transformation of food systems. Having said that, in Kenya, we are developing a stakeholders map. And if you look at that map, you just close your eyes because of the intertwining and the different colors coloring the maps. It will even confuse you more. So what we're saying is, it is one thing to develop the map, and it is another thing to know what the various actors are doing so that we avoid duplication and we build synergies amongst the various actors for this worthy cause. So for me, number one, what is very, very important is to strengthen that coordination mechanism. Develop tools and structures to be able to report and monitor so that we can monitor progress. It doesn't have to be a conference like this when we come together. We need back home to be able to talk to one another, exchange, and be able to see what every player is doing. Another area that is important is the financial flows. Where are we putting our money? Are we getting value for money? In Kenya, we are using a tool that has been developed by the World Bank and IFA in order to track, we call it the 3FS, the financial flow for food systems. Where are we putting our money? Are we putting our money in the right places to be able to transform our food systems? I think I'll give my colleague time to also. I can talk until tomorrow. Another very important area is our reporting system. In Kenya, digitalization is key in our agenda. We want at the strike of a button, the national convener is able to get data that is updated, that can be accessed through a dashboard, so that he doesn't have to make 20 phone calls to be able to know what is happening. So there are quite a number of areas that we can support and strengthen, but I'll leave it for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeff. Appreciate it. Quite a rich experience what's happening there in Kenya. So then ask Honest to then tell us from his vantage point what's happening in your country and how you can advance the ecosystem of support and get all the different stakeholders. You just move the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ismail. Sometimes too difficult to talk of the speaker who is the latest spoken, but I'm going to do my best. So with the government of Tanzania, we are taking food system transformation as the moral obligation. We have moral obligation to our people to transform their lives, especially those who are living in the rural areas. So at this stage, we are at the implementation stage. We are done with the talking, dialogue. Now we are moving to implementation stage. not easy. As you know, there is a lot of players that we have. The government system, we have partner system, and then each of them they have their way of doing things, the interest. Now we are putting them together to focus at specifically goals. So with the Tanzania, is that now what we are doing is that we are incorporating food system aspects to our national investment agriculture plan 9. And it is under review, and it's coordinated by the Prime Minister's office. And we are taking a lot of effort. We are talking together that we look at it in the food systems level. So we study that system, then the issue of sustainability will be there. So the other thing that we are looking on is that it's also coordination, robust coordination, and coordination that provides a space for every actor to chip in, that provides a space for each actor to see that part of the system. So that's what we are looking at. And as the government, what we are calling from our partners is that they first connect themselves before coming to the government. I know the coordination is there, but has to be fit to fit the momentum that we are having right now. And also looking at what the government is doing. For instance, the government now we are looking at putting our investment in having water for plants and the livestock. And that is investment, the initial investment. So we are looking at the partners that to see that lens. I know that it's putting money for this investment, but how can we move together? How can we make steps if we want to work together in that direction? So it's a matter of adjusting and looking and focusing on what works best. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. I will have one set of questions for you, and if you can just respond in about 2 minutes so we can move to the next question. We heard what you said about coordinations, reporting, data, and all of that. I want to push a little bit in that directions, especially because the next set of speakers from the development partner community who are playing an active role in your countries and somewhere else supporting governments. From your perspective, how can the collective actions of the ecosystem of support that we're talking about improve what's happening on the ground so we can deliver, not just coordinate, not just track, but how to get down to delivering what needs to happen next and more and better to really make us capable of delivering on the ground. So I'll start this honest this time around, and then Lucia, if you just take a couple of minutes so we can move to the next segment. But key word is how do we get to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What it takes to do. So when I look at this is that we need collaboration. Collaboration from the onset of planning. Then, and with the implementation, let's work together. And the most important is transparency and trust from each group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the time is now right for us to act. We speak a lot of English in meetings like this, but it is time to act. Now, in Kenya, we have the goodwill of the government. And when we went for the stock-taking moment in Rome in July, the head of the delegation was the deputy president. So the goodwill is there. So what we need to do then, we need to transform our pathways into programs. Yeah? We need to have a monitoring and evaluation tool to ensure that we are taking the right steps towards the right desired goal. Now, in order for us to do that then, we need to look at the entire ecosystem, look at where we are putting our money, reorganize that area to be able to achieve our desired goal. And then what is very important is a follow through so that we can be able to measure. Because if we are not able to measure, then you cannot have anything done without measuring. We need now to have a system where we are measuring where we are going. If you don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there. So we need to know where we are going and take the necessary road to ensure that we get to our goal.
Thank you very much. And like what I'm hearing, the need to be deliberate. We go from plans to programs, to invest, to collaborate, to work together. And of course, the need to measure, to track, to retrofit, to be able to see better rather than just navigating in the dark, which is super. One example I always cite when it comes to that, all of us want to live a healthy life, but some people go and see the doctor. But when you go there, the first thing they do is to get your lab report to know how to treat you, right? So the economy is just like a patient. It needs a lab report, you need the data, to be able to know where the pain points are and how you move forward. It's very, very important. Thank you. Thank you. Let me now move to our development partner colleagues on the podium. I will start with Khadija and I'll come to you, Kelly. We heard about the need to collaborate, we heard about the need for action for delivery on the ground. And you, Khadija, have managed to successfully grow an enterprise, horticulture enterprise on the ground, which takes production all the way. So you really done the change. You see what's happening on the ground. Your ability to dialogue with policymakers has been key to that success, I guess. We just heard about collaborations and delivery modes and programming. So could you tell us about some of those challenges that you have to overcome as an entrepreneur and to get to where you are today and how that could inspire us as we seek to transform these systems? Thank you.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, so what you were actually asking, the success of private sector, a company like the one I have really depends on people from my left side, really depends on the government to create an enabling environment for companies like ours to flourish, but also we depend on development partners and different sorts of support they have been offering to private sector. So maybe just to give a brief of what we are doing as a company, we are into horticulture. We are producing, we are adding value, but also we are marketing horticultural produce locally as well as we are exporting to EU countries and Asia as well, but we don't do that ourselves, but rather we are working with smallholder farmers. And apart from that, I've been fortunate enough to start an incubation hub for youth in agribusiness. So whatever challenges that I'm going to speak here, these are not just challenges facing me as Khadija or challenges which are facing my company, but rather challenges which are experienced by other private sector players as well as the smallholder farmers in particular in my case. Yes, I've been having lots of dialogues with policymakers and I'm happy the Tanzanian government is really welcoming when it comes to receiving all our challenges and finding solutions to some of those challenges. And maybe just saying one of those, I've been trying to persuade the government on why we have to engage the youth. You were speaking, the former presenter was speaking of inclusivity. How can we engage the youth? How can we engage women in agriculture? And this is not just for Tanzania, for Africa as a continent. And I'm happy to say this month, during Nane Nane, Her Excellency President of the United Republic of Tanzania acknowledged that when she visited my facility, she was inspired to see what we are doing and she accepted the Building a Better Tomorrow program. So I see it as an impact, but also different conversations we have been having, at least they are able to listen and find solutions to some of the challenges. So one of the major hurdles to starting and growing the business which I am doing, I think it has been access to finance. Was lucky enough to start the company which I now run when I was 25 years old. Was just right after coming from school, and at that particular moment I had no collaterals, and I think it is the same case for majority of smallholder farmers. The sector is highly dominated by women, and in African countries you will find out women do not own land. When it comes to going to financial institutions, the conditions really do not resonate with the situation of these smallholder farmers, women and the youth as well. So I think access to finance, but also affordability in terms of financing as well. You go to financial institutions, you will find out, I'm happy to see what is happening now in Tanzania. At least we are getting single digits, but previously it was 20% interest rate. It was 23, 25% interest rate. And you look at the margins, you realize there is no way you can make profit out of that. But also in our case, in the horticulture business which we are doing, we have been struggling with quality of produce. Unfortunately, the markets which we are serving do not care whether these produce are coming from smallholder farmers. The market cares about whether you're meeting the standards or not. So you realize we still need a long way to go in the system to make sure that farmers understand good agronomic practices. And actually now, with all these challenges happening, the crisis, the climate change, we realize the quality is really jeopardized. So I think there is a need for all different stakeholders to chip in and find solutions to most of these challenges affecting private sector, in particular in my case, smallholder.
Excellent. Thank you, Khadija. It was good to hear the perspective from Mrs. Khadija who's in the trenches. Kenny, we heard from her the importance of the policy environment, access to finance skills for young entrepreneurs and youth. From Anas and Priscilla, we heard about the need for coordination to collaborate all the different moving pieces to get things done, going from strategy to programs and to tracking and monitoring. Quite a lot of things that is being done there. From your point of view, working with an agency who is a catalytic actor across the fields, we're just talking about providing both funding and technical assistance. As we hear from the governments here, but also from the private sector, trying to adopt this food system approach, what types of support do you think that agencies such as USAID can bring to move the dial and get us to advance towards successful transformation of food systems? Thank you.
Thank you. It's really an honor to be here. Thanks to being organizing this important session. And I appreciate the chance to share USAID's perspective on how we're supporting food systems transformation across Africa. We've heard from my government partners, private sector partners, your job is a big job, and USAID sees itself as an organization that can help facilitate the achievement of the goals that you're setting for yourself. We do this through the Feed the Future initiative, which is a whole-of-government initiative designed to reduce hunger, poverty, and malnutrition. It was launched in 2008 in response to the global food crisis, and it continues to meet the current crises of the day. I wanted to focus on three areas that could use scaling in collaboration, of course, and partnership. And those are, in fact, policy, business, and consumer. So we know that the right enabling environment is essential for global food systems to deliver safe, nutritious food at affordable prices. The right policy and regulatory regime can level the playing field so that businesses can in fact deliver safe, nutritious food in local and regional markets. One way that we do this is through an interagency agreement through the Feed the Future initiative with our U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And it's focused on building food safety capacity across Africa in partnership with African governments. One of the ways that we're doing this to build their capacity, to build their community, and to position governments to both protect public health and promote trade and commerce. So the second area around business, I couldn't have said it better, but businesses matter a lot, and particular small, USAID is interested in creating incentives for small and medium enterprises, especially those that are women and youth owned and led, that produce and process and sell safe, nutritious food. Essentially, if there isn't the business case for healthy diets, if healthy diets aren't the food system outcome that we're all working towards, then we need to work harder. Healthy diets need to become a compelling business opportunity for businesses. So that's something that we're also focused on. Innovative partnership is also essential. And one of the things that one of the partnerships that I thought I would highlight is one with the Global Food Safety Initiative, which is a new partnership that USAID launched in April. We are a learning partner with them on an ambitious agenda to increase the capacity of small and medium enterprises to deliver safer food to local markets and for trade. So that's one area. And another focus of ours, and you'll hear a lot of this from Gain too, is large-scale food fortification. And in fact, this is an area that policy and private sector really converge. We know that large-scale food fortification can increase the consumption of healthy diets, and at the same time, we know that countries do struggle to adequately meet the needs of consumers with fortified foods. So we launched Afford, which is a new initiative designed to do exactly what needs to happen, which is to scale up large-scale food fortification. So that's another specific example that I think we could all work together on. And then finally, consumers. People need affordable and healthy diets. Food is not nourishing if it's not safe and if it's not affordable. And we know that 3.1 billion people in the world can't afford a healthy diet. So the third area is really focused on consumers, both protecting consumers to access healthy diets and empowering consumers to demand safe and healthy diets. I did want to mention something that I've learned a lot about. This is not something that USAID has invested heavily in, but I'm so excited to learn about the World Food Banking effort. Just heard about an example in Kenya. This is an incredible way to bring surplus food to people who need it the most, perishable, nutritious food, while reducing food loss and waste and addressing needs to reduce methane as well. So anyway, something to look into. But also related to empowering consumers, I did want to highlight that USAID is collaborating quite closely with Gain and some other partners on a project called Eat Safe. So one of the things that USAID as a donor can bring to bear is new evidence and research on what factors are effective when consumers, what factors are effective in building demand by consumers of vendors in local markets. And we have a great example of this in Nigeria, experimenting with the Safe Foods brand, which really creates an incentive for businesses to invest in food safety and improves the availability of safe food in traditional markets. So those are just some examples. I'm going to end by just acknowledging some of the themes that some of the other speakers have said. Partnership. It's partnership, collaboration across public, private, civil society, including youth and women voices. So essential. We don't want to miss opportunities to bring them in.
Excellent. Thank you. We've heard about the importance of policy, the business sector, consumers' access to food, and that goes back to what you all said here. I guess you have an idea of where we would like to go, right? And perhaps are struggling with how to get there. But in order to get there, we have to start making changes. Like to talk about action. I would like you to reflect just for a minute or two how you started to see changes happening from your different part of the ecosystem where you are. So maybe we can start with Priscilla ground and we compete with CN, Honest, and the Penny, are we seeing changes on the ground that gives us some way of a sense of starting on this journey? And what are those changes? Thank you.
Thank you once again. We have begun seeing changes in Kenya. And these changes have come about as a result of government policy that has motivated young people, because our future actually is in the young people to get involved in agriculture. Just about 2 weeks ago, I happened to visit a 35-year-old farmer who was doing 3 acres of maize in the Rift Valley. And he said one thing to me that was quite interesting. He said, because of this fertilizer subsidy program in the country, I've been able to, for the very first time, access fertilizer that I am using on my 3-acre plot. And he told me that he is expecting 3 times what he has been able to get in the past. And I could actually see the crop. I have pictures of the farmer and his field, and he was very, very happy. So yes, we are beginning to see change, because when you have and implement policies that favor the small-scale farmers, then you can appreciate the reception. And going by this farmer's testimony, he's looking forward to expanding his farming business. And again, this is a very young farmer. So supposing we have concrete and clear mechanisms to be able to monitor such farmers, then we'll be able to encourage them to continue producing. What was very interesting, he told me also, was that he's been getting advisories from his phone. And this is a government initiative, because we have a decreasing number of extension officers in the field. He's able to embrace digital technology to be able to get advisories, plant at the right time, plant the right variety, engage in good agricultural practices, and be able to see fruition. His concern was markets. Currently in the country, we are implementing the strategic food reserve regulation, meaning that this farmer will be able to dry his crop in good time, because we also have a program where we are distributing or taking around mobile dryers for farmers to dry their crop. So they'll be able to dry their crop and sell it at the right time. So for me, this is a game changer, but we need to monitor and keep track so that we can also minimize on wastage when it comes to food production. Because sometimes what happens in Africa, we produce enough, but we waste half of it. So for me, we are seeing changes in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Khadija, and then I'll come back to Kelly before I go to Honest. So, and briefly, maybe in a minute, what are the changes that you see on the ground that gives you hope that you'll be on this journey?
There are lots of things happening currently. One, I think in Tanzania, it's a huge budget increase for me. 3 years back, a budget to agriculture sector was 260 billion, but this year, 2023, 2024, it has moved it to 970 billion. So you will see it's like 3 times the increase, and a huge part of that budget goes to infrastructure development. There is an initiative by the government to put irrigation infrastructures, and I believe that will definitely combat the climate change challenge which we are currently facing. Apart from that, I mentioned earlier, we have been advocating for single-digit interest rates when it comes to loans in the agriculture sector. We have seen that being implemented currently in the country. There are some banks offering up to 8%, something which was not possible 5-6 years ago. Apart from that, I'm 32 years old. I mentioned I've been really having this desire of seeing young people going into the agriculture sector. And we all understand as much as we have a huge population of young people in the country, but unfortunately they have not been interested to go into the sector because of the challenges they have been seeing in the sector, including access to finance, access to market, access to technology, and all those sorts of things. But with the current government, there is a program called Building a Better Tomorrow, and that particular program is giving answers to all those challenges which we are holding the youth from engaging in the agriculture sector. To me, as a private sector player, I see there is a hope for tomorrow, and I believe as much as lots of things are happening, that the government will continue to do more to create an enabling environment for private sector to prosper.
Perfect. I like what I'm hearing. Access to means of productions, access to markets, government putting in more investments, private sector, financing being much more affordable. Those are gigantic changes that are critically important. Honest, are they sort of double scaling, right? Kenny, what kind of changes from your vantage points have you noticed on the ground that gives us a sense of reassurance that we're moving in the right direction?
Well, I wanted to respond by reinforcing some of what we just heard around finding better ways to fully engage women and youth. I mean, and I think I want to keep my response really short, but I know I personally am extremely inspired. I have the privilege of being voted as judge tomorrow. There are 2 pitch sessions, so if you have any doubt that there is an incredible resource of creativity and mission, etc., go to those sessions tomorrow. But my point is, I think that I think that's something that we need to ensure that we're not missing opportunities to bring women and youth into these processes, coordination, partnership, etc.
And I think this is going to be a major game changer, bringing in the skills, developments and upgrading, creating the regulatory environment for that, the institutional support, the institutional infrastructure just to create those opportunities. Often I hear people say, you don't want to go in agriculture, but you cannot just walk into any profession just like that, right? So I think setting up the environment that therefore they can be productive and lead a productive life in farming has to be part of getting them in there. But also the entire chain, food system change. She was talking about the importance of the involvement of women in processing. The biggest thing happening to African food system change is the emergence of the processing sector. 75-8% in the hands of young women entrepreneurs like Khadija. How do you get them to access technology for innovations, the capital for investment upgrading, the managerial capacities, market intelligence? That's where the investment should go when you hear that. So it is a huge part of what we need to do to move this system forward. So let me ask you the same questions to Anas. What changes have you seen on the ground taking place that give you that sense of reassurance that we are starting on this journey and hopefully we'll be successful?
Yes, as a food system convener, looking back 2 years ago, I'm seeing a lot of change. This big change is in mindset from the policymakers going to the technocrats. The whole system is talking now food system transformation and inclusion. So, and another change that I'm looking at is the way now we are institutionalizing food system into our agriculture, to our national investment agriculture plan. So that's to create sustainability that we are looking at. And the most important one is that the sense of urgency that all the actors they are having implementing food systems. So it's no business as usual. We are acting with urgency, and we are counting by 2030. to achieve our goals that we have set. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please join me with another round of applause for our panel. Excellent ideas that came here from your different points. We all know Medellin is a very complex issue, right? Agriculture alone is difficult and complex. Let alone talk about the entire ecosystem. So many moving parts that have to come together, and yet they well coordinated to do the right thing. It's going to be a complex set of parts. We'll have to have the willingness to allow it, those different parts to move freely, but in a system that is coherent and consistent has to move. That's really the complexity of the challenge of it. But I have no doubt that what we heard here is a good signal that things are starting to move on the ground. So thank you all of you for the role you're playing as government officials, as the government partner, but also as entrepreneurs moving our food systems forward. So thank you to the audience for listening to us. So I think we will stay on because Nadia will have a few questions for you, at least with the audience, and they may ask those questions to you. So thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Dr. Badian, for this moderation. You can see why I told you it's great. You really got the best out of them. And thank you all for your contribution. My role now is to open the floor to you, to your reaction. You've heard from government representatives, you've heard from development partners, you've heard from huge private sector representatives that things are changing, things are moving, but that's challenging, that's still complex. Some of them from Kenya were talking about results framework, and unfortunately, as I say, the results are not talking for us. So the change has to be faster, deeper, and really bring. I have a friend who tells me, do we bring a grain of rice on the table for those who are starving at the end of the meeting? So this is what we must aim to make a difference in people's lives. So what's your reaction to the effectiveness of support? What do we need to do better? What do we need to do faster? What do we need to do deeper so that we deal with the challenge of food security, of nutrition, climate change, of resilience, of private sector, of women, of youth? The list is so long, and Lawrence said it's complex. So what do we need to do differently? What do we need to do better in order to bring about the food system transformation we're talking about and being effective in supporting them? So the floor is yours. I'm opening the floor. They're giving you food for thought. You heard from Priska, you heard from Hadija, you heard from all of them. So what do you have to say? I'm opening the floor to you.
I'd say excellent, really excellent presentation from the panelists. Now, my name is Ruth Okoa. I work for WE. Yes, listening to the panelists, my concern and what probably we should look into is the coordination of the food systems. We know that food system is cross-cutting, they sit in one ministry, and I would speak that way probably for Kenya and Tanzania. But we don't see the different departments, even within a ministry, or the different ministries working as one and coordinating the response, at the same time coordinating the reporting. So we find sometimes there's a lot of duplication, or sometimes we have misses that definitely we do not need to have. So I'm really emphasizing the need of having a coordination at the national level that brings together all the stakeholders, including private sector, that would respond to the food system crisis. The second one is budgetary commitment, and I really want to applaud the government of Tanzania for hugely increasing their budget for agriculture. But we've seen in many cases that agriculture being the backbone for Africa, normally has a very small budget. And even the other ministries that support the food system do not see it as a necessity. For example, the Ministry of Health in most cases are responsible for nutritional outcome, but we never see any dedicated budget towards nutrition, or if it is there, it is very small and limited, or often changed, or like reallocated to other areas. So I think a lot of commitment in terms of budgets that will go towards this is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to bounce back to our government representative, the challenge of coordination, the challenge of financial allocation. How do you handle that in the government? Do you feel we are making as much progress as we should?
Thank you very much for that observation. Yes, it is true that coordination is really key, especially within the mother ministry and other government departments and ministries, as well as the private sector. So, in my view, I think we have made steps towards the right direction. And by having a technical working group that is actually in operation, and we are making the right steps in the right direction. I think what we need in Kenya, for example, is just strengthening to be able to engage at both national and subnational level. On the issue of budgets, again, if you listen to my earlier presentation, I say we are in the process of doing an analysis of the financial flow of food systems in the country. So once this analysis is complete, it will provide a baseline going forward, because you cannot say that we are not really putting the money where we are supposed to put it if we don't know where we are coming from. We need to have a starting point so that we have a point of reference and say we started with so much in a certain given time, and this is where we are today. So 2, 3, 4 years from now, we'll be able to now look at the correlation between our investment and funding to the impact that will be there on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In Tanzania, is that really coordination is a challenging issue. But what we are doing is that between the ministries, the agriculture allied ministries, we are all coordinated by a framework called Agriculture Sector Development Program. That's a framework that is coordinating all the ministries. So the budgeting process follows the framework. So with the budget commitments, which has to be reflected in nutrition, is that in Tanzania we have the multi-sectoral nutrition action plan, and within the budgeting process, we have a budget line within the Ministry of Finance, an objective that all the ministries budgets through that objective. So it's well captured in the budgeting system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this answer. The floor is yours to look at it. Oh, I see 2 reactions there. Can the mic? Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, my question goes to probably across the board regarding the in the last decade there has been a lot of donor funding going into the food system transformation, agriculture, and in between. But the results sometimes are daunting, and we find also relating to investment by donor community, looking into the different companies, SMEs that we work with, different companies are really over funded by many donors. So my question is, at what point do we look at the value for money and return on investment on the donor funding? Do we have a system to look into this from government and also coordination among the non-governmental and the civil society? Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. We all have one development partner, the panel. Yes, I value for money. All the money development partners have put in the system. It's a bit unfair that it's going to you only. But please give us your thoughts.
Thank you for the question. I didn't catch the whole question, but I think you're asking about the level of the high level of investment going into small and medium enterprises or businesses overall, and are we getting value for that? Is that
A lot of money went into agriculture and food system. What are the results today? Is there value for money from development partners?
Okay, I didn't catch that for the first time, so thank you very much. So is there value for money? I mean, it's a question that we all need to ask ourselves, like wherever the resources are coming from. When we look at the Feed the Future initiative, which is the initiative that I mentioned when I first introduced myself, we have a very strong system for measuring results, but I think we're also making progress in terms of developing new metrics that help us understand better how we're having an impact in the food system. And the reason why I want to respond in this way is because when we first started the initiative, we were really focused on, as I noted, our high-level goals, and I think we all share these, reductions in poverty, reductions in malnutrition, and hunger, on investments in agricultural value chains. But if we're really serious about food systems results, it really does require all of us to think a bit more about what results we're talking about. And I think that there's an acknowledgement that we have work to do in that area. So I know that answer probably isn't so satisfying, but the results are ones that we probably need to collectively be clear about. And I'm talking specifically about those intermediate results that really show us that local and regional markets are on track.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you all, the panelists. I am Ubet. I'm from Ethiopia, in Ethiopia. My question is to you, Khadija. Congratulations on making it this far. You are such an inspiration, and I love hearing your story. And since you are here sharing, success stories to an extent, I would love to hear from you on, what worked in terms of having you engage as a young woman in this space, having you engage in a meaningful way. And what were the avenues or spaces that were created for you to actually feel this, what you just shared in terms of having an influence in that decision-making process. I ask this question because so many times I have seen in programs or in different policies or interventions where we will highlight, women and young people as the foreign center, but in the end up either doing this from a populism point of view or as a one-time campaign. But from what you just shared, it looks like you've had meaningful engagement in that policy dialogue and influencing it. I would love to hear your question.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. I think doing what I am doing has been a proof of concept that you can support a young woman, and that young woman in return can support thousands of other women and youth. Grateful, as I mentioned earlier, maybe continuing doing what I am doing has influenced the policymakers to believe if you invest in the youth, if you invest in women, if you increase your investment in the agriculture sector, it will definitely report results. The reason why I'm saying that, my business started as a really small business. The good thing is, maybe being millennial, I used to post on Facebook from day one when I was starting. So people have seen the journey from starting from the scratch, struggling with raising financing for what we are doing, struggling to get markets, not only locally but also on the export side. And I wouldn't say it has been milk and honey, and there are times when I really wish to give up, but I realize it's not just Hadija on the picture, it's Hadija and many other young people. So just to conclude, I think it's the proof of concept, just showing the policymakers, showing the donor community, it's really possible for a young person to invest in agriculture and to get results out of it. And I should say, there's someone mentioning there are some few companies which are maybe overfunded by donors, and to me can also be, there are some areas which happen to be areas of interest which are overfunded. A donor might be having their own perspective, but in terms of donor funding, looking at the landscape of the sector where I am in, people are considering it to be a risky business. Maybe now in my country that perception is changing. But initially, I'm telling you, I cannot mention the number of banks I used to knock doors and no one was interested until when a donor came and they funded your operations. During COVID-19, we were about to actually close the business for 8 months. And if you're working with 5,000 smallholder farmers, closing the business means they do not have market to their produce. I have employees who are really depending on these companies. So it was donors who really supported a business like ours to still be on the map. And I'm happy Gain was among those donors who gave us COVID relief funding, which took us back to business. So I think there is a need for all different stakeholders to work together to support agriculture sector, to support food system, and I'm happy, as much as we are not there yet as a company, Hadija is not there yet as an individual, but at least not only in Tanzania but in Africa, we have given people that proof of concept that it is possible.
Thank you, Hadija, for a very inspiring speech from a young leader in the agricultural sector. We are coming to the end of our session. I think you've heard from Krista about the effectiveness of support. And should I give you the floor? 2 minutes then, not more. We have to go.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks to the amazing panelists for their perspective. My name is Joyce, and I work for GAIN in Nigeria. So my question is to two representatives from government. Yeah, we've heard the successes you made in your various countries, and we've also heard the kind of support that you need to advance food systems transformation. But I'm curious to know, yeah, you have quite a number of agreement partners, global agencies that are interested to support food systems transformation. Each organization have their own strategic objectives, have their own areas of interest. For you as government, how are you trying to ensure that such support is targeted or aligned to your own priorities, so that way you're able to harness the opportunities that are available from various partners and indeed meet your own goals and objectives as government?
John, it's really difficult because you asked them to answer. I have to give you 1 minute each.
Thank you very much. It's kind of confusing and it's difficult. It's all about coordination. So how are we doing this? With the government, we are having a system that when the partners come to work with the government, they first have to report to the sector government. If it's agriculture, there is some agriculture. They present their cases. Then we discuss, okay, just here, go this way, then go this direction, and there's no other partner. That's how we are doing it. But it's not easy. Thank you. We have the money. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. In Kenya, we have public investment management regulation at the National Treasury. And this was informed by the fact that different development partners would actually target a specific intervention. Meaning, you have areas that are more funded than other areas. tried to do is we have a framework for development of concept and proposal, which goes through a thorough check at the National Treasury to ensure that we do not have duplication of efforts. So that is happening in my country. And going forward, this is the right way to go because you could find a certain development partner funding the same thing. So that has been eliminated in my country. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close here. I think you had very inspiring statements from all of them, and we want to thank you. We know it's not easy. We understand the complexity, the coordination, the budgetary involvement, the youth engagement, development partners having to demonstrate results. So we are well aware that it's a complex agenda, but that's why we are here today. Thank you for giving us hope, we say we are hope, and showing signs of the change. And please join me in uploading your panel as a release. Let me call now on Dr. Lawrence Haddad, our host from today, from GAIN, to basically give you his closing remark. And with this, I'll be done with my role as moderator today. It's been a pleasure to moderate you and engage with you. And I'm handing back to you now.
Thank you, Nadine. Big round of applause for Nadine and for Usman. Just when you thought it was safe to leave, you've got to listen to me. I've got 5 points and 5 minutes, so I'll be brief. First thing I picked up was around diagnosis. Usman mentioned it very clearly. Go to the doctor, you need to get a diagnosis. We need to diagnose our food systems. So we need data. We've got data, we've got food system dashboards, we've got FAO data, we've got lots of data. What we don't have is an assessment of how well the food system of a country or a sub-part of a country, how well that is doing in terms of relative to other countries, relative to over time. We don't have a diagnosis of the performance. Now, if you go to the session tomorrow morning, the opening session, plenary, we'll hear about a report from IFPRI and AGRA, and GAIN contributed to it as well, which talks about African food system performance. I think it's the first stab at a performance assessment. But we also need diagnosis of budgets. We have 3FS from IFAD and the World Bank. We need assessment of how coordinated our policies. Academia is working on that with GAIN. We need also to analyze the ecosystem of support. And Forresty and David Nabarro was here earlier, have done some really good work on that. So diagnosis is really important. Usman, Priscilla, and Nadine all mentioned this. Number 2, enabling environment for business. This came up a lot. There are lots of levers to shape business behavior. Investors, consumers, civil society, other businesses, employees, but government is a really powerful one. And government has lots of opportunities to change the way businesses behave. Think about what they do. Food procurement. Governments are massive procurers of food. Do they have an ag perspective or a food system perspective? They have massive interventions in food subsidies, both at the production side and the consumption side. And they also have lots of investments in ag R&D. Do they invest in ag R&D with a hunger perspective or with a food system perspective? And Hadija and Kelly both mentioned this. So government is very, very powerful when it comes to setting an enabling environment. Third, I think this is perhaps the most important one. It's about progress. How do we measure indicators of progress? When something's difficult to achieve, we want some early wins, we want some early idea that we're actually doing something that's going to lead to faster hunger reduction, faster climate action, better resilience. We need those leading indicators. We need indicators of progress. And I think there are 2 types. We heard about them from Priscilla and from Kelly and from Hadija. First of all, we need to do different things. Usman asked the question, what have you changed? What are you doing differently? What are you doing differently in organizational arrangements, in resource allocations, in policy change, in the use of data? but we also need to do the same things differently. So Kelly mentioned food loss. Doing food loss with a food system lens is very different to doing food loss with an ag development lens. Khadija mentioned irrigation. Doing irrigation with a food system lens is different to doing irrigation with an ag transformation lens. And in fact, ag transformation and food system transformation are very different. In food system transformation, we're looking to affect the whole range of outcomes. And we're looking for action all the way from the farm to the start. Ag transformation doesn't do that. So we need to be clear on that. Fourth one, we talked a lot about coordination. We talked about our difficulties. And I want to make a plea that we don't start with coordination. I think form always has to follow function. So we need to know why are we coordinating? Because if we don't know why we're coordinating, we can waste a huge amount of resources, political, financial, transactional, on it. There's obviously some coordination that's intrinsically important, some inclusion that's intrinsically important, getting youth voices in, not just hearing from youth, but listening to them and acting on what they say. And also, I forget who it was, I think Priscilla mentioned the importance of decentralization, linking down to the counties, the districts, the provinces. This is very, very important. Often those voices are ignored. But obviously a lot of coordination is instrumental. We want coordination to achieve something. So let's be clear about what the coordination is to achieve. And finally, my fifth point, it's American election season coming up. And we used to say, we don't say it anymore, we used to say in elections we campaign in poetry and we govern in prose, which is an English expression that means we can kind of say whatever we want when we're campaigning. But when we get down to actually governing and doing things, it becomes very difficult and it requires lots of difficult decisions and conversations and planning and action. I don't know how much poetry we're going to see in the US election this time around, but there will be a lot of hot air. And what we must do is not succumb to the hot air. These kind of conferences can sometimes lead to people like me and others grandstanding and saying big grand things, but actually the action is at the national and subnational levels. That's where change has to happen. And I think it was Priscilla who said, if we don't know where we're going, all roads can lead to the outcomes we want. So we have to be very clear what the priorities are. We must make sure that we don't let lack of evidence, lack of data, lack of coordination, even lack of funding be a paralysis for action. We must act. The best time to act was 20 years ago. The next best